The ancient economy did not announce itself. There were no headlines about inflation, no charts tracking growth. Yet economics shaped every decision people made. When to marry, when to migrate, when to rebel. In the time of Jesus, economics was not abstract. It was hunger, it was debt, it was survival. Judea was not Rome's richest province, but it sat at a crossroads between Africa, Asia, and Europe. Control of Judea meant control of trade routes. Rome didn't need Judea to prosper. It needed Judea to pay. Empires do not grow by generosity. They grow by extraction. Rome ruled through economics before it ruled through force. Every conquered land became a revenue stream. Judea was no exception. Rome demanded loyalty, but more importantly, it demanded taxes. Local rulers acted as economic middlemen, extracting wealth from the population and sending it upward to the empire. This created an economy. Yet people worried about money every single day. They worried about debt. They worried about taxes. They worried about whether tomorrow they would eat. This was the economic world in which Jesus lived. A world where survival depended not on innovation, but on land, power, and obedience. Wealth was not measured in numbers. It was measured in control. Control of land, control of labor, control of grain. A man with land did not worry about hunger. A man without land lived one season away from ruin. This was not capitalism. It was agrarian hierarchy. Slavery existed everywhere in the Roman economy. Slaves were not only prisoners of war. Many became slaves through debt. Unable to repay loans, people sold themselves or family members. Slaves worked in agriculture, construction households. Slavery reduced labor costs and pushed free workers into unemployment. Women were economically active, but legally vulnerable. Many worked in textile production, food preparation, small trade. Yet women rarely owned land. Widows were especially exposed. No land, no protection, no income. This is why widows appear so often in ancient economic discussions. Agriculture was not a profession. It was life itself. Seasons dictated survival. A late rain meant hunger. A poor harvest meant debt. Most farmers did not own their land. They rented it from elites, paying rent in grain, oil, or labor. After rent, after taxes, after seed for next year, very little remained. Debt did not begin with greed. It began with necessity. A bad harvest, a sick child, a Roman tax demand. Loans came with interest. Miss one payment, and land could be seized. Over generations, land moved upward, from peasants to elites. Over time, Judea transformed. Small farms disappeared. Large estates emerged. This was not progress. It was concentration. The rich did not work the land. They owned it. Others worked for them. Taxes came from every direction. Rome demanded tribute. Local rulers demanded fees. The temple demanded offerings. Refusing to pay was not rebellion. It was suicide. Tax collectors were hated not because they collected taxes, but because they represented an unfair system. The temple was not only sacred, it was wealthy. Offerings flowed inward. Money changers profited. Elites controlled access. Religion and economy were inseparable. Day laborers had no guarantees. Work was found each morning, or not at all. No work meant no food. Hunger was not a metaphor. Women worked constantly, yet owned almost nothing. Widows were the most vulnerable. No land, no income, no protection. Their suffering was systemic. Slavery reduced wages. It increased inequality. It stabilized elite wealth at the cost of human dignity. Money was always scarce, not because there wasn't enough silver, but because it was trapped at the top. Most people rarely touched coins. They lived by barter, favors, and survival exchange. Scarcity shaped behavior. People avoided risk. Innovation was dangerous. Stability mattered more than growth. In such an economy, fear was rational. One mistake could end a family line. Social mobility was nearly impossible. You were born into your economic class, and you usually died there. Education was limited, capital was inaccessible, land was already owned. The idea of working your way up would have sounded absurd. The economy was not designed to reward effort. It was designed to preserve hierarchy. Food was currency. Grain was stored, taxed, traded, and controlled. Whoever controlled grain controlled survival. During shortages, prices spiked instantly. Elites waited. The poor starved. Hunger was seasonal. So was unrest. Cities consumed. Villages produced. The imbalance was constant. Urban elites lived off rural labor. Villagers paid taxes but received little in return. Cities symbolized power. Villages carried the cost trade existed, but it was limited. Most people never participated in long-distance trade. Trade enriched merchants. Trade enriched merchants and states, not peasants. Roads were built for armies first. Commerce was secondary. Violence enforced the economy. Soldiers protected tax routes. Courts protected creditors. Punishment discouraged resistance. The economy did not function without force. Peace was conditional. Charity existed because the system failed. Arms were not kindness. They were survival mechanisms. Charity did not fix inequality. It managed its consequences. Parables spoke the language of economics, landowners, wages, debt forgiveness, harvests. These stories resonated because they were real. They questioned power, without naming it. Economic despair creates openness. When systems fail, people listen. Hope becomes valuable. Movements grew not from comfort, but from pressure. Many uprisings were economic. Hunger creates rebellion. Debt creates desperation. Rome responded with force, never reform. Markets were not places of opportunity. They were places of survival. Prices fluctuated wildly. One bad harvest could double food prices overnight. The poor spent 80 to 90% of income on food alone. There was no savings cushion. One crisis away from collapse. Violence wasn't just physical, it was economic. Taxes were enforced by soldiers. Debts were enforced by courts. Resistance meant punishment. Many revolts in Judea were not religious. They were economic uprisings. The system was unstable. Too much wealth at the top, too much suffering below. Rome extracted until societies broke. In 70 AD, Jerusalem fell. Not only because of war, or not just spiritually, but economically, and because the system was broken. Today, we use banks instead of temples, digital money instead of silver coins. But the structure feels familiar. Debt, wealth concentration, economic pressure. The ancient world reminds us. When economies serve extraction over people, collapse is never far away. Extraction has limits. The tools have changed. The pressure remains. Debt still shapes lives. Wealth still concentrates. History does not repeat, it warns.